Welcome to Business Talk. It's a new season, a new year, the year of the tiger, and great to be talking about the story, one of the greatest stories, I think, over the last couple of decades, the great financialization of the world. And it's one of those stories that I think it's as old as humanity itself. It's about greed, it's about lust, envy, violence, all of those things. The tsunami of cheap credit that rolled across the planet between the early 2000s and just before the global financial crisis, and then again from the late 2010s, I think it's more than a simple financial phenomenon. It's temptation. It's offered entire societies the chance to reveal aspects of their characters that they couldn't formerly afford to indulge. And I think Michael Lewis reckons in Boomerang, and he's one of my all-time great financial journalists, that Icelanders wanted to stop fishing and become investment bankers. The Greeks wanted to turn their country into a piñata stuffed with cash and allow as many citizens as possible to take a whack at it. The Germans wanted to be even more German, and the Irish wanted to stop being Irish. So I'm really itching to start taking you on this journey through this world, thanks to Monocle Solutions and Business Tech South Africa with this new season of Business Talk. And my next guest, well, he's had a front row seat to this biggest show in capitalism over the last 2 decades. David Buckham, CEO of Monocle. David, great to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Michael. I'm really excited to be here. And thank you for hosting us this time around again.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your story. The last time we spoke, we were talking about the end of money, which has received a phenomenal response. And unsurprisingly so, after reading it, it really is one of those that you should have right there next to The Intelligent Investor, the iconic books of an era. What motivated you to found Monocle? Because you've got a maths degree, you're interested in banking. What is Monocle at its core?
So, yes, I mean, I was kind of a reluctant entrepreneur. I wouldn't even call myself, I was like really not wanting to start my own business. I wanted to work in an investment bank. I really wanted to be an M&A deal specialist. And I had studied maybe the wrong degrees. I had majored in mathematics and then done a master's in English. And I had got into technology sales, and I'd applied many, many times to investment banks, and I wasn't able to get interviews. Sometimes via a friend, I'd get a coffee, but I never really got an interview. And I just eventually got a job as a trader in an investment bank, an equity, you could say equity derivatives trader. And that bank failed during the Sambo crisis. I resigned shortly before the bank was bought out by one of the big four in South Africa. And basically, I was without a job. So I moved from Cape Town to Johannesburg, moved back in with my parents in 2002 at the age of 30, and started a consulting company because I didn't have any products to sell. So the only thing that I could really sell was myself. And I knew a few people in banking and phoned them, and I started, I had a list of 100 people, and I phoned them, and there were 8 meetings that emanated from the 100 and 0 business. So then I decided the consulting side wasn't working out. So I'd pivot onto training. So I do kind of advanced Excel, you could call it. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with value at risk. It's a really interesting methodology which employs Monte Carlo simulation. So I created a training course with Visual Basic for applications. I coded a Monte Carlo simulation, and I showed people how to do this on project finance deals. Instead of having a high and a low and a standard, kind of outcome, a worst case scenario, best case, you'd have a distribution of possibilities. That saved me from an almost terrible year in 2002. And I generated, I think I had 12 people attend my course from different banks. One of the guys who attended the course just thought this would be applicable elsewhere, and I started to get leverage and footing in the banks. Then you're walking in the passages, and someone phoned me in about 2003 from a software company and said, have you ever heard of something called funds transfer pricing? So I said, yes. Actually, I just did a lecture on it the other day. And so they said, can you come to a meeting? So I went to the meeting, and they said, we're going to go and see the customer, and you must tell him that the software can do this. So I said, I'm sure the software can do this. It's just a case of getting the data into it and writing the calculations and the scripts. And then we saw the customer, and the customer explained precisely why they wanted to do funds transfer pricing, what type of funds transfer pricing they wanted to do. And within an hour, we had a deal. And then we had a big implementation. And that's kind of how then, there was a call at another bank, which was to say, this software company wanted to pitch for a Basel II implementation. There was this thing called the Basel rules. So I, of course, read them. And so I went to that meeting, and we got that deal. And then I had to hire staff, and we got going. It was very difficult in the beginning.
Well, very difficult, but it also is remarkable how entrepreneurial the journey is, because while you say you may have been a reluctant entrepreneur, it does follow a very similar path to so many entrepreneurs that I've spoken to. Lots of meetings, funneling them down, and almost naught coming of it. Moving back in with the parents and starting with nothing, and then gradually and surely building up over time this formidable consulting business. But it was also at the right time, wasn't it? Because what we saw, Basel hasn't always been with us. It was before the official Basel rules, this obscure banking committee in Basel that would oversee the global financial system of banking, but very informally. Then we had Basel I. I think it was less than 20 pages. And Basel II, then built on that, and now we're in Basel III. So it really is the right time for someone with your skill set to come and say, right, we can help you with solutions here. Now, as a company that consults to banks and insurers, you've presumably experienced several major financial events in these industries. One that stands out, obviously, is the global financial crisis of 07, 08. From your vantage point, can you just give us some insight into that period while you're building this business up, only 5 years into the journey?
Yes, Michael, it was crazy. I got a call. So I went to conferences in Europe, and I would meet people and stick my hand out and shake their hands and take them out for dinner and talk about how I could help. And they were looking for certain skill sets to implement Basel, and I met up with a Danish company, a guy that was convinced that we should follow. So I basically suggested that when he meets a customer, a software company, he should suggest that we send a team in, and we'll come and figure out how hard it would be for them to implement these complex capital and liquidity rules, which is a fair question to ask, but we'll do it fast, and we had a methodology. So he phoned me out of the blue, December 2004. I was about to go on a holiday, and he said, you know how we did that kind of proposal for that Danish bank that didn't go anywhere? We later on did win business in Denmark quite a bit. But before this happened, he said, well, I've sent it to an Icelandic bank, and they've said yes. So can you be in Iceland in 10 days? So I said, sure. I've never been to Iceland. So I went to Iceland, and, it kicked off a fascinating series of discussions. I met the CEO of the bank in the first meeting, and there was some kind of understanding I had that he felt like he had to do this Basel thing, but there was a great willingness in the people, super intelligent, really intelligent people. And we had, we had a team of people in Iceland. We had a team of people. We won business in Denmark. We had a team in Hong Kong. Later on in Singapore, we had a team in Luxembourg, which was really interesting. And three different teams in the UK. We were all of our work was basically offshore. Until about 2010, 2011, we were doing mainly offshore work. We have local customers, but those grew massively. And what happened in Iceland, well, Fionia Bank, which was a bank, 100-year-old bank in Denmark, had, in the 2008 crisis, one of my colleagues was on the trading floor when they failed, the second they failed, not the minute, the second that they couldn't make a 3-month money market repo work. No one would take the other side of the repo. That, we saw banks fail right in front of us. The Icelandic bank, the work that we were doing was to create quantitative credit models, but they had been extremely risky. They had taken huge risks. They had bank assets to GDP in Iceland of 10 times.
Yeah.
So really, really risky. And when they failed, I got a call. We saw there was a Danish analyst who was saying negative things about Iceland, and then Moody's argued. Moody's said, people said you should downgrade Iceland, and Icelandic people got very angry, and the banks got very angry, and then they invited this Danish guy to Iceland to speak, and it was a great shouting match. It was fascinating.
But Michael,
and they literally were.
Michael Lewis, just in his book Boomerang, writes about the culture of the Icelandic male in particular. And it is, the land of Vikings. And he writes that almost all Icelanders wanted to stop fishing and become investment bankers over that period of the early 2000s. It was just, he said, it was a feeding frenzy unlike any he's seen before.
Yeah.
And that certainly backed up on what you're saying.
We literally, colleagues of mine that are still colleagues today, Chief Operating Officer of Monocle, Willy Ehlers, and Jaco van Buren Schiele, who's the Chief Financial Officer. We all were living in Iceland at one point. We were all together, and we used to go out at night, and we used to meet all the traders from the banks, and they literally were, and I joke with you not, like some of our friends went back to fishing, quite literally. We would go do some gym, and then go to the bar, and then go out. It was a fantastic time. They had an expression in Iceland, because I still have some Icelandic friends, have an expression for ostentatious kind of stuff that say, "Oh, that's so 2004." It would be like the way to. Anyway, so I was back in South Africa, sitting on my couch, and I got a call to say the head of credit for this bank said there's been a national disaster. I wasn't sure, literally, if a volcano had gone off or if something else had happened. And then I began to understand from him that they were completely finished immediately. And there was this one, so very abrupt stop. And that's one of the things that happens in banking that a lot of people don't fully appreciate, is that banking is not a slow burn. There's not a little bit of risk that grows into more risk. It's exactly when you need liquidity that you can't get it.
Yeah.
It's neat. So the bank that we worked with in Iceland failed. Bankers went to prison from that bank.
Still one of the few countries, I think, to this day where you've seen that kind of accountability. And that's quite interesting, isn't it? I mean, you touch on that in the end of money. There isn't very often a lot of accountability when it comes to white-collar crimes. And one can understand why there's been such a pushback against the established financial system.
Exactly. I mean, the bankers themselves that we work with, and I mean this quite sincerely, are generally very honest people, like the hardworking, generally rule-driven, people. It's in Iceland's case, it was a very rapid privatization of banks that were taken over by wealthy individuals. It was those people that pushed the banks into basically extreme forms of lending. And I would argue that, throughout the last 20 years, we've seen not bad individuals, but bad positioning, bad timing for banks, and bad policies from a credit perspective, a certain guardrails not in place. And it happened around the world. Hong Kong, we were working with a bank in Hong Kong. Also, they had on-sold Lehman mini bonds. So, of course, under Glass-Steagall, you're not supposed to raise funding from individuals and do investment banking at the same time. But in order to get around this, Lehman created a mini bond, which they got all these kind of correspondent banks, these little banks around the world. When I say little, not so little, to sell. And then when Lehman failed, we were working with a bank in Hong Kong, where the bank was told by the HKMA, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, to pay up all these pensioners. And the bank said, well, we just on-sold a product, and that product's gone bad, sorry. And that bank was told by the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, no, you are going to pay. So, yeah, I think Monocle now is, South Africa-based, UK-based, Europe-based in Amsterdam, and is a very different kind of entity to what it was when I started. It's been quite a journey.
In that, I mean, often you hear the venture capitalists when they talk about taking their firm through that commercialization valley of death, that scaling is often the most difficult thing. You may have a good idea, you may have a good product market fit, to use the lingo, but it's then taking that from one client, one part of the world, one country, and expanding that all the way around the world, which is what you've done with Monocle, 250 odd staff now. Tell me a little bit more about how you managed to scale and avoiding the fail.
So what I learned the hard way was, the more projects you have, so say you take on another bank with another project, so you hire more staff. But if you're a control freak, as I used to be, then what happens is you just work yourself harder and harder. So you're driving between the banks, you're flying around the world nonstop, and it's chaos, and no one wants to send a document out without your approval, and you have to read every word. So really what scaled us was the original people that traveled with me, to Iceland. We lived in Luxembourg, we lived in Denmark. Those are the people that run the company. I don't run the company anymore. So it's by empowering other people, and with a people business like ours, it's absolutely critical to empower people to make decisions, and to make decisions about customers, pricing, to truly empower them, and then also to trust people. So that took a long time of me letting go. And
I was about to say, not easy if you're naturally one of those people who likes to hold on to the reins.
Yeah, it was very hard for me. And you can actually see it. We've got this graph of the number of staff, and people often remark, what happened over there? Because suddenly it kind of goes parabolic. And I said, that's where I let go.
Yeah. But, entrepreneurship is such an interesting journey, phenomenon of self-exploration, of understanding who you are. Are you a builder? Are you a tinkerer? Are you a creator? Are you more suited to that mold of being professional manager? And why you need different people at different stages of the life cycle of the business. Now, the growth really has been phenomenal, considering you are a reluctant entrepreneur. What do you think has been the secret to Monocle's success in such a relatively short period of time?
I honestly think it's a focus on the people and the quality of their experience. So, for example, we want to have fun. We want to go out. We want to experience these places. We see it as a privilege to work in these environments with these banks. To have the right attitude and to hire the right people to have that experience. So not arrogant, to have a workmanship like, get the work done. There's nothing special. Do the job. Finish what you said you're going to finish. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. And then kind of mutual respect for ourselves and our customers. Work hard, and so no trickery.
David, I mean, listening to you talk, and you're someone who studied maths and got a literary degree and background. What sort of skills, what qualifications are you looking for from a young graduate who would want to be getting into the world that you inhabit at the moment?
So, Michael, we're looking usually for people who have got some kind of honors degree in either finance or engineering or something technically difficult. We find that we don't necessarily need finance. You can actually teach someone banking, we've discovered. But you definitely need to have solved, you need to have shown that you've got a 4-year degree. On occasion, we might hire from liberal arts, someone like myself, but generally speaking, we're looking for technically difficult degrees, or CAs. We love CAs.
Yeah, I suppose it just demonstrates an ability to think critically, to solve problems, and so often it doesn't really have to, as you say, it doesn't have to be in banking. I mean, my own journey in financial journalism was also from the kind of liberal arts, studied journalism and majored in sociology. And David Gleason, who at one stage owned Finance Week and had the talk column, and had an own investment banking and stockbroking background with Humphrey Buckham here. He took me under his wing. He taught me how to read a balance sheet. So you can teach these things. Now, just as we end off our time, we're in an interesting place in the financial sector. I think, as the old Chinese curse goes, may you live in interesting times. What are the new and exciting challenges that Monocle is looking forward to in the months and the years to come?
We are really excited. I mean, the European adventure, we've opened our office in Amsterdam during the pandemic, during 2020, which it was an incredible story how that office got open. We've won work, we're working now in the Netherlands, and we've got great hopes following Brexit for the whole of Europe. In South Africa, I see a great opportunity, because I think we're starved for skills in South Africa, and if you get the story right and if you get the opportunities correct, we can have a very exciting time in South Africa. The banks here are very sophisticated, and we're very blessed to have such a sophisticated banking sector. We're solving quite difficult problems. We're at the foot of Africa, 1 billion people, very young, demographically, huge opportunities to influence the outcome for Africa, and an enormous opportunity to do that with a positive attitude. So I think a lot of people the people that are here now want to be here, and we've gone through probably the 2 most difficult years of the last 500, never mind the Spanish flu. We go all the way back to the bubonic plague. That's what I'm using as my reference point. So I think we're all heroes to be sitting here. I said this on a Teams meeting last night to the executives, 20 executives. I said, I can't tell you how proud I am of the positivity and the energy, new business. And so we're pretty amped at Monocle at the moment.
Chatting to the CEO of F&B the other day, Jacques Celliers, he said almost the same thing about businesses and businesses that they're seeing through their book that have made it through the last 2 years. Those are the businesses that will pretty much make it through anything. If you could survive as an entrepreneur the last 2 years, just survive, not even grow, then you really in a very select minority, and also as management teams, those are the guys to back. Those are the guys who can really go out there and build from the detritus and pick up the pieces of the last few years. So I think that's the right view. And in terms of banking, 100%. We see so many problems in Africa: financial inclusion, the unbanked. How do we formalize all of that informal business? The youth that you mentioned, all of that is a huge opportunity for banking. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how banks and fintechs, and there's always that bit of inherent tension, how that plays out as those new solutions are brought to bear. David, I'm sure we're going to have you back on the show soon, though. It's been fantastic chatting to you about the story of Monocle and your own entrepreneurial journey over the last 2 decades. I'm sure there's a story behind the loss of hair as well that links back to building a business, but we won't go there.
This happened early on.
Great pleasure chatting to you.
Thank you so much for having us, and I really enjoy chatting to you. And this platform is fantastic. And thank you to everyone for listening, and thank you, Michael, for hosting us.
Fantastic. David Buckham, CEO of Monocle, here on the Business Talk and Business Tech, as we look forward to bringing you more stories of the great financialization on South Africa's #1 business news website. Cheers.